Hey everyone and welcome. Today we'll be talking about the film The Bikeriders. Fun fact, this film is inspired by a book of the same name by Danny Lyon, and the real Kathy mentioned that when she walked into the bar she saw men with their belly buttons out, which explains why you see some men in the bar with just a vest on and no shirt underneath. This film came out in 2024 and stars Jodie, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy and was directed by Nichols. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The Bikeriders follows a motorcycle club, the Vandals, that starts as a hangout for guys who enjoy motorcycles and shows how over time this little motorcycle club turned into a violent gang that not even their leader could control. The Bikeriders is a fictional drama structured as if it's non-fiction. It has similar vibes to Sons of Anarchy, The Outsiders, or West Side Story. Jodie leads this film as Kathy, who is telling this story of these bikers to photographer Danny. We see how she gets mixed up with the club and how even though she really wanted to leave, she loved Benny too much to leave without him. It was interesting to see her and Johnny clash throughout the film over Benny, with both of them thinking they knew what was best for him. Through the ups and downs, she stuck by Benny, who wasn't the easiest to stick around, and I love that she often stood her ground. One thing I was confused about was the accent because I thought it was giving more Minnesota, but I was unsure if that was the plan. It was interesting to see how Kathy's ideals changed the more she spent with the Vandals. Austin Butler plays Benny, who was this bad boy who was unhinged but loyal to Johnny and fell in love with Kathy, and even got her boyfriend to leave. Throughout the film, he does not say much at all, but we know how much the Vandals mean to him, considering how proudly he wore that jacket no matter who tried to stop him. I would have loved to learn more about his backstory to understand why he loved riding so much, that the only time that he got emotional was when he almost got his foot chopped off and wouldn't be able to ride anymore. It was like he married Kathy, but the through sickness and health vow was taken between him and his motorcycle, and I feared that that motorcycle or the club would have been the death of him. In the end, he ends up giving up the motorcycle club for a simpler life, but you can tell that it's something that he still thinks about, but knows that it's for the best. Throughout this film, we see how Benny is loyal to Johnny, and while he kind of saw him like a big brother, he really did not want to follow in his footsteps and take the responsibility of running this club. I assume he saw everything that Johnny had to deal with and realized that he enjoyed being a part of the club, but running it was just not something he wanted to do. He enjoyed being a lone wolf sometimes. One of my favorite scenes, which further proved how loyal he was when Johnny was talking to some guys about a problem at the picnic, and it seemed like they might come to a solution that didn't have any violence, and Benny wasn't there, and someone jokingly asked Benny if he was going to fight with his boyfriends. Before anyone has a moment to think, Benny is sprinting to the group and punches the opposition's leader in the face, and all hell breaks loose until Benny almost kills one of them and they have to stop him. This showed that he really is loyal to the club and to Johnny, but also needs the club because he did not know when to stop. Later in the film, he disappears after the club changes, but he comes back when he hears that Johnny was killed, and at that moment, everything kind of clicks, and he breaks down in Kathy's arms, which is the only time we see him cry, and realize that he needs a change, and it's mostly because the club is not what it used to be. Tom Hardy plays Johnny, who is the leader of the club, and he watches out for everyone, making sure that they are protected and calls all the shots. When I was watching this movie, I just kept saying to myself, dang, Tom Hardy is a good actor. He just seemed like this guy who was good at reading people and you really didn't want to mess with him or anyone that he cared about. Johnny seemed like the ideal person to run the group in the beginning because of his willingness to foster this community, and he did a good job of doing what was best for the club. But as the club started to expand to other cities, he slowly lost control, which ended up letting snakes into the club he built from the ground up. In the end, I honestly thought he was going to kill someone and end up in jail, but we see as the film talked about that there was a separation between the old ways and the new ways, and with the old ways, they settled disputes with the fist or knives, and even though that was agreed, the new guy settled it with a gun. His death marked the end of the old ways and the birth of this new way that effectively ruined the club. One complaint that I had while watching this film is that in the beginning of the film, it starts off by saying something along the lines about the film being about a photographer who documented the vandals, which made it seem like Danny would be the center of attention in the film, and that the film would truly be told from his point of view, and we would see him more in the film. Danny, who's played by Mike Feist, is seen throughout the film, but the film does not focus on him. The movie focuses on the Vandals predominantly through Johnny, Benny, and Kathy, with the latter being the narrator of sorts, and Danny is there occasionally, but the film doesn't revolve around him. It's not a big complaint, but from that note in the beginning of the film, I did think that the focus would be slightly different. My favorite part of this movie was probably the slow build-up of the role that the kid would play, who is played by Toby Wallace. Throughout the film, he keeps popping up, and at first we see him stealing with his friends and seeing the vandals, which sparks his interest, and throughout the rest of the film, he is trying to join. In one scene, he tries to join, and Johnny tells him he can join, but his friends can't as a test. And without hesitation, he says okay, which tells Johnny he is not a right fit for the group because he would just leave his friends behind, which we saw throughout the film is something that the Vandals never do because they are like a brotherhood. The kid cuts Johnny out of anger, and Johnny knocks him out and tells him never to come back. Towards the end of the film, we see how the kid has joined a different chapter of the Vandals and challenges Johnny's leadership. And he ends up killing him with a gun instead of the agreed upon knife, which was proof that his character is something that wasn't put there on accident. It was a slow buildup of him being, in the film, and he was there for a reason, and throughout the film I hadn't really figured out why he kept coming up, but in that moment I understood why. As I look back now, I realize that he was so different from Johnny. Like, Johnny was a family man to begin with, and he committed crimes, but he did it for the group, while this kid just seemed to do it just because of his poor home life or to look cool in front of his friends. Johnny built this motorcycle club for like-minded guys to come and look after each other, and it fell apart so quickly when this kid took over and decided that he wanted to use it to sell drugs and, make money and just kind of become a club that became more like menaces than a brotherhood. The Bikeriders is an interesting look on how this biker club turned into a gang over time. I thought the performances were great, and it was bolstered by some great music, and I felt that the film wrapped up nicely. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.